All right, Giants fans, here we are live after the Giants loss internationally in Germany to the Carolina Panthers, the lowly Carolina Panthers, a team that came in allowing over 32 points per game. And previously, New Orleans head coach Dennis Allen was fired after losing to the Panthers. The Raiders fired their offensive coordinator and their whole offensive staff several weeks after losing to the Panthers. And now it's the Giants' turn. Now it's the Giants' turn, in my opinion, to fire their general manager and their head coach. Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll, the Giants need to blow this up. John Mara and Steve Tisch, of course, there was a vote of confidence from John Mara a few weeks ago in late October in Manhattan, saying that he doesn't anticipate any changes after the season, leaving the door open there, saying there won't be changes during the year. But how could you not be making changes now? How could you be blaming this loss on just the quarterback, on the previous general manager and the shortcomings of the roster you inherited? Must have been tough for that NFL broadcast not to blame that overtime fumble on Daniel Jones. Felt like I was watching a four-quarter propaganda tour where we were supposed to believe that everything that went wrong on the field for the Giants was Daniel Jones's fault. Listen, we've been over this before on this podcast, on the Talkin Ball live with Pat Leonard postgame podcast here on the Believe Network and on the YouTube channel. Thanks for being here, everybody. We've been over this before. Daniel Jones needs to be replaced. The Giants need to move on. They need a new quarterback. They knew they needed a new quarterback this year. All of that is true. It can also be true, however, that they have lost 5 straight. They can't stop the run. They don't manage games well. Their roster isn't good enough. The injuries continue to be an annual problem. They left Jakob Johnson inactive for this game after using him to put a local face on their trip to Germany. Part of the reason was because they had injuries in practice to linebackers. They had to elevate a linebacker in Curtis Bolton rather than Jakob Johnson. This is coming off a week where the general manager cut Nick McLeod because he wouldn't take a pay cut, a defensive starter, a special team starter, a key player and piece in their locker room and on their team. Players did not understand the motivations behind that, even though they understand it's a business. It felt a lot like those Hard Knocks conversations in relation to Saquon Barkley. Even in this game, you see the disappointment fall, unfortunately, on the young, promising player Tyrone Tracy's shoulders with a drop pass that leads to an interception and a fumble in overtime forced by former Giants defensive tackle A'Shawn Robinson, recovered there, and Eddie Pinheiro knocks through the game-winning field goal for Carolina. So the Giants 2-8 at the bye week. My 4-13 preseason prediction for the Giants record still looking good. Unfortunate, of course. I'm as tired of the losing as all of you guys are. Part of the reason I'm advocating for change and for firings coming off of this trip, off of this loss, and off of this season is because I want to cover winning football. I want to see something moving in a positive direction too. And I will tell you when I think things are moving in a positive direction, and that time is not now. So we're going to get to all of your questions. We're going to continue to talk ball here as always and uncover and unpack the reasons behind the Giants' failures. If you want to know more about my reasoning and rationale behind why they need to blow this up. And of course, we're going to discuss all the ins and outs of the Giants roster, your questions. Remember, if you want a comment or question answered or addressed first, please purchase a super chat or a super sticker, and that will elevate your comment or question to the top of the queue and the thread. And remember, here are our sponsors: MyBookie, Boom Chaga, and Estate 98 Coffee. We have a reminder here, great from Patrick Evans, one of our loyal followers. He says, hit that sub and like button. Really appreciate that, Patrick, for you saying that. Remember, guys, when you're here, hit the like button while we are live. That adds really a healthy level of engagement to the community we're already building here. YouTube literally takes that engagement and sends out flares into the sky for Giants fans who aren't aware of what we're doing here yet, and tells them that we are live here. I am the New York Daily News NFL columnist and Giants beat writer, and of course, hosting the Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard podcast on the Believe Network. These post-game lives, we're doing them every week. And so we continue rolling on here as you, like I said, hit the like button while we are live, and then also subscribe if you're not already to the YouTube page. A lot more content coming, a lot of content already on that page. So First of all, we are sponsored by MyBookie Sportsbook. MyBookie rolling out the red carpet for sports bettors this year, including risk-free Thursday bets. And of course, every week, check all of my social media profiles. I release Pat's picks every week. We've been rolling. There have been 9 full NFL weeks so far as we're talking here. I've only had 2 weeks below 500 in those 9 weeks. We're making you money this football season with MyBookie if you're following along with my picks of the week and also my Giants prop bets, my Giants sprinkles, usually hitting 1 or 2, if not all, every week. So we're rolling on here. So here's the deal. Pat's Picks is the promo code. You go to the link in all my social media profiles and you click on that link. You make your first deposit when you sign up and you use the promo code Pat's Picks and you will get a 100% match on your first deposit of $50 or more, all the way up to $1,000 plus a $10 casino chip. Let's win this football season with MyBookie. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere. Also brought to you by Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, a natural extract loaded with anti-inflammatory, immune-boosting antioxidants, and heart-healthy compounds. You can easily pour this natural liquid supplement into any of your favorite drinks. I put mine in my coffee every morning and immediately feel the difference. I personally have felt a post-workout-like energy boost with Boom. Chaga also has the ability to lower cholesterol, reduce inflammation, and improve immune and heart health with its beta-glucans and antioxidants. Go to boomchaga.com today to place your first order. And if you use the discount code TalkinBall25 or access it through the QR code on your screen, you'll get 25% off your first subscribe and save order. Right now, that means a month's supply costs you only $30. Start feeling the difference today at boomchaga.com. And last but not least, brought to you by Estate 98 Coffee, a specialty coffee concentrate, perfect for when you want to make a quick cup of coffee and skip the lines. Takes me less than 10 seconds to make a delicious Estate 98 iced or hot coffee. It's great as a mixer for espresso martinis, and each bottle can make up to 16 cups. Go to estate98.com/talkingball to get an exclusive offer for 80% off your first order. All right, we roll into the chat here. Barbara Carroll says, so far at halftime, it's going well if we're trying for a higher draft pick. Barbara made that comment at halftime when the Giants were down 10-0. The Giants were outgained in the first quarter. You ready for this stat? So in the first quarter of this game, Carolina Panthers 157 yards on offense, Giants 16. The Giants were down 10-0 at the half, in part due to a red zone interception from Daniel Jones that was tipped and intercepted, and then also a Graham Gano missed field goal, and obviously Chuba Hubbard with 93 rushing yards, I believe, 93 rushing yards at halftime for the Carolina Panthers. And you're right, Barbara, it still stands here that this was a battle for the number 1 pick, possibly in a lot of ways. The Giants and Panthers were 2 of 9 teams with 2 wins entering this week 10 of the NFL season. Now the Giants losing head-to-head in this game certainly helps to vault them up the draft board to get what you would believe would be their quarterback of the future if they're hunting that. We know they are. We know they're in that market. We know they are going to draft a quarterback. And we know that they were looking to draft a quarterback this past spring when they did not make a trade up and ultimately drafted Malik Neighbors. Now, though, the question is, do Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll deserve to be the GM and the head coach who make that pick and develop that player? Certainly there will be disagreements about that between myself, different reporters, different fans. I think a lot of people feel a lot of different ways about subjects like that. And obviously emotions running high, I'm sure, with the fan base coming off of a loss like that where the Giants look like a complete mess early on. It looks like it's an obvious loss. They make a comeback at the end. They maybe a last stand by Daniel Jones there. But the fact of the matter is the Giants don't get it done. Always something that goes wrong. And you can't just pin it on the quarterback. He's one of the problems. He's not the only problem. All right. Looks like we got a super chat in the queue. Let's jump right to that. Looks like it is Mark Sullivan. Mark Sullivan says, a great loss on the road, back-to-back to the Super Bowl. Mark Sullivan with some great tongue-in-cheek sarcasm there. Love it, Mark. Love that you're trying to keep like a smile on your face during these dark times. This is the worst. This is the worst kind of loss. This is the worst kind of plane ride home. This is the worst kind of flight to have to be on. This is just not where you want to be if you're the Giants and if you're an organization that, you know, I said this at the time, and I'll say this now. John Mara, there was nothing else he could say at the moment that he said that he still was confident in the general manager and the coach. Like, that was a time where at that point in the season, even though people like me knew that this was headed in the wrong direction and not turning around, from John Mara's perspective there, you're trying to um, reinvigorate the team. You're trying to show that confidence so that ultimately what your team does is responds to it, turns it around, and hopefully gets itself headed in the right direction. And you're saying to the GM and coach, hey, I'm still here behind you. Let's get it done. But 5 in a row that the Giants have dropped, shutout in the first half of this game. You have an offensive head coach calling the plays with the worst offense in the NFL. You have a Giants defense that can't stop the run. You have an offense and a team that scored 17 points on a Carolina Panthers team that was allowing 32 plus points per game coming in. This is just not acceptable. Whatever way you want to sugarcoat it, I think the one thing that drives me nuts when you see these games and you listen to these broadcasts, and this goes back to last year with Wink Martindale, there are people working in high places for organizations selling a narrative that benefits people for different organizations and different teams. And watching and listening to this broadcast and hearing literally everything that went wrong be pinned on Daniel Jones. For sure, there were plenty of things that need to be pinned on him. That flea flicker, even though I didn't like the call, of course, Wan'Dale Robinson open, you got to get rid of the ball. The turnovers you don't want to see, but blaming that interception in the fourth quarter on Daniel Jones, countless plays where something went wrong in a couple different places and it's being pointed out that protection was good and the quarterback didn't get it done. I mean, really hard to understand how this can happen year in and year out, how it can be sold as one thing on these broadcasts, on these national broadcasts, and people just gobble it up. I'm getting texts from people listening to what the analysts are saying and just buying it hook, line, and sinker. Anybody who is a subscriber on this channel, who follows the Giants, who's passionate about the Giants, and who wants the best for the Giants knows that I have been telling you from the beginning what the reality is with this team, positive and negative, right? Positive and negative. What's one positive today? You didn't hear Evan Neal's name a lot, right? You didn't hear his name a lot as far as pass protection breaking down. That's a positive. Now, you need to build on that. Obviously, he's a number 7 overall pick a few years ago who was a train wreck prior, battled injuries. The team misdiagnosed an injury, finally gets into the lineup, puts a little bit of a good foot forward here. Does he continue it after the bye? We'll see. But you got to be honest about what you see on the field, right? We're not going to point out only the negative. We're not going to point out only the positive. We're going to point out what went wrong, what went right, and all the in-betweens. But enough of this just 100% black and white. It's no one else's fault but the quarterback. It's disgusting. It's water carrying, and we don't do that here. That's the bottom line. All right. Let's see. Hey, Mark, thanks for that super chat. Patrick says Daniel Jones is not a good quarterback. Daniel Jones did, though, put his best foot forward in that second half. He led that comeback, and then the fumble, the turnover in overtime is the rookie running back. By the way, the Giants did pay Devin Singletary, a veteran, I believe, what was it, $5.5 million a year in free agency. So interesting asset allocation there. Saquon Barkley, an MVP candidate in Philadelphia. Just one of many things going on with this team. Patrick says there are too many open receivers. He is not seeing the field. Wide open receivers, he says. There were definitely 2 or 3 times during this game where the Giants, where a play did not work, and because Daniel Jones did not make the right read, did not let go of the ball, did not see the field. That's for sure. That said, there were plenty of other games or other plays and drives that didn't work out, and it wasn't on the quarterback. It's overstated at this point. Like, I think we've passed the point where no one should be sitting here arguing that Daniel Jones is the Giants quarterback next year. That's not an argument. It's not going to happen. That's not what should happen. Yes, he makes some good plays. He takes some away. That's for sure. But plenty of things that the Giants did wrong in this game, from drops to even Malik Neighbors, again, had a catch today where he's below the sticks, where you're supposed to run a route past the first down marker so you don't have to have a 3rd and 1 or a 2nd one. Like, these are things that players need to do to help the quarterback, right? Drops. Even in the what was it? When the Giants launched that touchdown drive, make sure I get this game situation correct. How about in the 3rd quarter where the Giants go 65 yards for a touchdown for Tyrone Tracy, 32 yards, and then the defense gives up an 80-yard touchdown drive capped by a Chuba Hubbard 1-yard touchdown. How about the Giants defensive line? 0 sacks against the Commanders last week, 1 sack against the Carolina Panthers this week. 1 sack in 2 games from the Giants defensive line. All right, looks like we got another super chat here. Chronicles in the house. What's up, Chronicles? Chronicle says this is on Daniel Jones. His running back carried him all day. He is not good enough. Can't make simple NFL throws. It's sad and embarrassing. Listen, if you want to pin this all on your quarterback, go right ahead. You run it back with this regime. Same old problems, same old stuff. Just running out of people to blame, right? Last year it was supposedly the defensive coordinator's fault. This year it's the quarterback's fault. Yeah, let me know. I mean, this is what I'm talking about, Chronicles, is to sit here and say Daniel Jones is not the answer is already something we've done. That's already true. We already know that. This game was lost because of mistakes throughout the roster. They missed a field goal from a kicker who never misses, in part because this guy was banged up all season because he got hurt in practice and then played in a game and hurt it worse. Then comes back and he's rusty and he misses a field goal. Daniel Jones's fault? I don't know. A drop in the 4th quarter. Daniel Jones's fault? A deep shot to Malik Neighbors. Ball hits the turf before the receiver can get to it. That's Daniel Jones's fault? The refs tried to call that complete. Obviously, it was tough to keep complete. All right. Jim says, Pat, please discuss the problems with 2 light edge rushers on the defensive line, which leads them very susceptible to a good running game. Is this the reason we are near last in run defense? What can we do? I think their interior is not good enough either. If you noticed, a lot of the successful runs today for the Carolina Panthers, especially during a period of the game where the Giants were really struggling to just get them off the field and get the ball back for their offense. A lot of those runs were right down the gut, right up the middle. There was a time where Dexter Lawrence came off the field, and obviously without him out there, the run game especially is going to suffer. If you remember, though, even when Leonard Williams was here in previous years, he and Dexter Lawrence, the line was still not as good as you wanted it to be in stopping the run. But their run defense has gotten worse under Shane Bowen. It's really scary. It's upsetting. The edge rushers is a problem as far as the run defense as well. I mean, the edges with the corners and the edges, they're very susceptible to that. When they paid Brian Burns, who's an excellent player, all that money, in addition to drafting Kayvon Thibodeau, and then you have Aziz, the one concern about paying Burns that money and having that much invested in those 2 guys is, they're known more as pass rushers, and that's more what you're paying for. But Brian Burns never made his bones on being an amazing run defender. Now, he has been a guy in the backfield blowing up some plays for the Giants, but overall, they're not invested in edge rushers and players who are elite run stoppers. They're just not invested in that. So, I think that the Giants defensive line, the plan, right? So we talked about going into the draft this past spring. One thing that the fans were curious about was, why didn't the Giants draft a swing tackle? Why didn't they go defensive tackle? Now, obviously the Giants had a lot of different holes to fill, so they couldn't fill all of them. But one of the things, they had to draft a tight end because the tight ends they've drafted haven't been good enough. And they traded for Darren Waller, who retired, right? Joe Schoen also traded a second round pick that he could have used on a corner to acquire Brian Burns. Also gave Brian Burns all that money, which he could have spread out on a different edge rusher and Saquon Barkley. So there's a lot of different dominoes that fell here and there. But interior defensive tackle help, that was really an underrated need that the Giants had going into this draft, and they didn't address it. And they've really struggled on the interior. Like their defensive line, a lot of the conversation publicly has been about Deonte Banks. And listen, his shortcomings and lack of effort, especially, those are unacceptable and should be talked about. But, a lot of this run defense problem is that the runs are bursting through the hole, bursting through the middle, bursting up the gut and out to the second level. And then these runners are coming there with speed and two-way goes. That's something actually Shane Bowen, the defensive coordinator, mentioned. So everybody's accountable here. Everybody's accountable. All right, let's see. Chris Spires, thank you so much, Chris. Chris says, my problem with the Giants is our problem is ownership. They don't pick good coaches or general managers. That is a very big concern. I think one thing that stood out during Hard Knocks was it was a little bit crazy to see some of the ways that Joe Schoen reacted in some of those conversations and, some of the rationale behind some of the decisions they made and the moves that they made. And then thinking to yourself, okay, they went through a 3-hour interview here and then they made these hires for this regime. It just seemed, I think Joe Schoen is probably a good scout, but as far as the general manager piece goes, like listening to Chris Rossetti give him great advice and him not heed it or take it and incorporate it, those types of things just made you question how those interviews went, right? With Giants ownership. I think if the Giants are honest, this is something I have pointed out ever since I took over on the Giants beat. And ever since I became the New York Daily News NFL columnist is one thing. And listen, the Giants aren't the only team. Okay. Believe me. Like when we talk about being bad self-evaluators, the Dallas Cowboys this year are a great example of a team that is very bad at self-evaluating right now. Like the Dallas Cowboys completely have misjudged who they are and not evaluated themselves properly, right? Because how can you evaluate yourself properly and go into the season with the roster that the Dallas Cowboys have? They have some promising pieces, but you look at their inability and lack of desire to address the running back position, the offensive line slipping, the depth slipping out the door. The fact that essentially they just decided, hey, we're good enough already. Why do we got to fix this? So the Cowboys, great example, bad self-evaluators. Who else would be? I was a victim of kind of overestimating what the Saints could do this year because I didn't trust that division. I thought maybe the Bucs would take a step back. I thought the Falcons were kind of frauds, and obviously the Panthers were there. So I thought, the Saints are talented enough. They got enough like good high level players at key positions. They'll figure it out. But that's another team that looked at themselves. They pushed money around trying to constantly remain competitive and completely misevaluated themselves, right? Like I said, I misevaluated them too. But the Giants just have a really hard time, ownership on down, evaluating who and what they are. Even the rationale behind, and listen, they're not the only ones either. Like the Cleveland Browns, when they go in the tank, it's like they cite things that went right with whether it's Stefanski's operation, whether it's with ownership and GM and drafting and asset allocation. It's like when things start get really bad and you're 3 or 4 years down the road, what are we referring to something that happened 4 years ago for, right? Like Brian Daboll got coach of the year as his first year rookie head coach with the Giants, and the Giants exceeded expectations in that year. There were a lot of coaches who could have won it that year. Daboll easily could have, even though he had a good season, not won it. Tomlin, Shanahan, Sirianni, all worthy candidates that year. Daboll did a good job that year. They were 9-7-1. A large part was because the defense also was excellent under Wink Martindale. They beat Lamar Jackson by forcing 2 turnovers of Lamar on short fields and giving the offense short fields. I think that absent Martindale, it's been a huge, glaring and obvious regression from the entire team. The defense's ability to complement anything that the offense does. They don't force takeaways or turnovers. They forced 31 last year, tied for the NFL lead with the Baltimore Ravens. This year, I believe they're stuck at 7, I think, with 1 interception. I guess it's 8 now. Did they force one today from Chuba Hubbard, right? So that's 8. So 8 on the year, which is just, far from good enough. The Giants are in a position where, from a roster standpoint to a personnel standpoint and even a staff standpoint, I mean, you have to remember too, when I'm talking about that firings are warranted here, remember that most of this coaching staff overturned already from last year, right? A lot of people didn't want to work here anymore. Some people got fired. Some people decided to leave on their own. It was just a mess. And so, here's one thing I will say. And whatever happens with the Giants, okay, as far as these guys' jobs and how they proceed, right? We'll see, right? No one has control of that other than the Giants themselves, ownership, etc. But Steve Tisch has been very quiet, and the Tisch family has been very quiet. And I outlined this in my preview of this game, that I think if the Giants lost this game, I think we will hear from Steve Tisch. I think we have to hear from Steve Tisch. I think that what I've seen since I've covered the Giants starting in 2016, and if you're just joining us, welcome. Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard, live post game of the Giants 2017 overtime loss to the Carolina Panthers. And I see all the super chats rolling in. I'm going to jump right to all of your questions next. But remember, like John Mara, he was being honest when he said he wants to be more patient with this regime than previous ones. That was an honest statement. And he's been criticized in the past by me as well as others for rushing to judgment. But first of all, there's a difference between firing someone after year 2 and during or after year 3. That's a full year. Okay, that's the difference. And then the other thing is, you don't stick with something that doesn't work. You don't stick with something that is taking you backwards. You don't stay with something that is burying you deeper into a hole. And you certainly don't stick with an operation where people feel wronged by the way they are treated, as I've outlined with some of these player issues and situations. So, I think it's a bad look. But I think that the precedent that has been set is, okay, for example, when Dave Gettleman and Pat Shurmur were on their way out, Tisch wanted to fire everybody. Mara felt it was unfair considering Gettleman's health situation, having battled cancer, felt like he deserved another year because he had been in and out in one of the seasons battling that and trying to get himself healthy. So he stuck with Gettleman into the Judge regime, and Steve Tisch compromised there. So after the Judge regime went south in that last year, you had the press conference and all that. Tisch said, no, I've seen enough, blow it up. And then even after the Giants won that playoff game in Minnesota, if you remember, Mara was quoted as telling a reporter, we're back in the post-game locker room. But Tisch had an interesting statement that he released. Even after all of that success, Tisch's statement said he was proud of the players, coaches, and staff, and that Joe and Daboll have laid the foundation for continued success. But he added, we all agree there is much work left to be done. And that really stuck out because it was the co-owner of the Giants in their highest moment since they could remember, since making the playoffs in 2016, with Romeo Okwara laying on top of Dak Prescott in MetLife Stadium in December. It was Tisch saying, we're happy, but we know we got a long way to go. And it was tempered enthusiasm. And I thought it was the right button and tone to press. And I think it reflects that we should all be reminded that this is a 50-50 split operation. The Tisch family and the Mara family each own 50% of this place. And we've only heard from John Mara recently in recent years. And obviously there are personal reasons for that with Steve Tisch and the family. And we've all been very sensitive to that, obviously. But I think that understanding the precedent of this dynamic, I think it's always important to understand that John Mara and the Mara family are only a half of the equation when it comes to making these decisions. And just so we're clear, the Giants, since Tisch released that statement, the Giants are 8-20-0. Since their 6-1 start to 2022, they are 11-25-1, and they are 4-12-1 against the NFC East, including 1-10 against the Cowboys and the Eagles. Just got a text from somebody that said that was a disgusting display of football from somebody that I trust. All right, let me get to your super chats because I see them rolling in, and I really appreciate your guys' support. Mark says, I bet the under 7 and predicted 4-13. Looking good. I would let Shane and Daboll pick their quarterback. Need some stability, in my humble opinion. Interesting. So Mark would stick with this regime despite. Christine, thank you so much. Christine drops $20 in. I appreciate that, Christine. Thank you so much. Thank you for that support. And Christine says, the quarterback threw 2 interceptions in the red zone. I do not understand how we talk about anything else. Well, Christine, maybe we're seeing this differently. He did throw the one where he rolled out and that gets tipped up. Obviously, you got a free runner at the quarterback. Quarterback's still responsible for taking care of the ball there. Obviously, that's on the quarterback. Don't like the play call. I think the play calling is bad. I think, you need that player, Jadeveon Clowney, a former number 1 overall pick, blocked in that position. But, of course, we've seen those interceptions before. That's definitely Daniel Jones, put it on him, whatever. And that's for sure. The other one, the Tyrone Tracy, I mean, I think if you're blaming that on him, I disagree. I don't think that's on the quarterback. I think that, it's a little behind the running back. I think he catches that 9 out of 10 times. I think most receivers catch that ball. I think you have to catch that ball. I don't want to hear about Theo Johnson over the middle, that people are freezing that picture and showing me a picture of Theo Johnson getting off the line. Daniel Jones drops back. If he throws that safety was driving down. I have the dots. I have the next gen stats. I've been looking at it. The safety is driving down on that play. I think that's a dangerous throw there. I think Daniel was trying to take a quick outside shorter completion. Listen, to blame that only on the quarterback, I disagree. We could agree to disagree, but certainly, Christine, what I do agree with you is, no one's sitting here defending the quarterback. Like the quarterback dynamic in the Giants situation is not good enough. But let's also remember this. How many backup quarterbacks are there in the NFL starting and winning games? Malik Willis in Green Bay has done it. Joe Flacco has done it. Sam Darnold has done it at a high level. Those are a few I just rattled off right off the top of my head. Who else have we got? I mean, Drake May, really technically a backup. Who else? I think I could keep going. And my point when I'm talking about all of these backups and the success they're having is the Giants had just as much of a chance as everybody else as a general manager and coach in this offseason to, if they really didn't believe in Daniel Jones, to go get at least a backup behind him that you trust, that you feel confident in, that you could put in. They had the opportunity to do that. They had the option to do that. They didn't do it. They went and got Drew Lock, a guy who they've put on the field a little bit, hasn't looked good when he's been on it. And remember, when Brian Daboll benched Daniel Jones in the Philadelphia Eagles game and played Drew Lock essentially entire fourth quarter, and the next week he put Jones back in as the starter, what did Daboll say? Daboll said, and this isn't I don't think this coach belongs on this team anymore, but this is in defense of Daboll. The one defense of Daboll would be he came out and said, well, he gives us the best chance to win. He's right. He's right that the roster they have, Daniel Jones gives them the best chance to win. Putting Drew Lock in does not give them a better chance to win. Whose fault is that? That's personnel. We saw on Hard Knocks, we saw the general manager say that Tyrod Taylor was going to be an option to come back. Tyrod Taylor wasn't coming back here. You left him on the bench healthy for Tommy DeVito. Why would he come back here? Christine, thank you so much. Scorpio says, Tom Brady, Troy Aikman, and Kurt Warner, greats. No quarterback play. Good quarterback play. Daboll stinks, and he hasn't prepared this team to play. Brady, Aikman, and Kurt Warner, no good quarterback play. Yes, they do. They also, I thought Kurt Warner today was taking shots at Daniel Jones even when they weren't warranted. That's what I thought. I'll say it. I don't care. Just like Greg Olsen was taking shots left and right last year in Dallas at Wink Martindale while the Giants offense couldn't move the ball an inch. These are just glaring broadcast narratives that are hard for me to not hear and see. All right, let's see. Rusty Nails 79. Ooh, Rusty Nail. I haven't had a Rusty Nail in a while. Might have to dip into a Rusty Nail later instead of the old fashioned. Rusty says, great podcast as always, Pat. Continue to keep it real. Since it's the bye week, do you think Daboll and Schoen still make it out of Germany with their jobs? Rusty, I don't see how. I really I don't. I think the only way they continue to keep their jobs after this is if the Giants really believe what the people who are friendly with them have been selling. If the national narrative of the people who are protecting the Giants operation, if that narrative continues to be that Daniel Jones is the only problem, and if the Giants organization really believes that, then if the Giants really believe that it's only Daniel Jones and they think this is a good coach and general manager being undercut by the Giants quarterback, then anything's possible, obviously, in retaining them. I just don't see how you could come to that conclusion if you just look at everything. And, I've said this before on this podcast. I'll say it again. Like, I gotta be honest, like, as a human being, I'm beaten down by all this losing and this bullshit. Like, professionally, you're trying to grow, and being connected to this Giants operation day in and day out, it's a drag. It's a drag. And the people who work for the Giants, whether it's a player, a staffer, coach, whatever, the people who understand and who get it, they don't get pissed when they hear me say the things I'm saying. I'm getting texts from people I trust that I'm right on target. They both have to go. I mean, I don't know how else to put it any plainer. I think they're done. That's my opinion. Now, listen, I don't have anybody telling me that Joe Schoen's going to get fired tomorrow, and I don't have anybody telling me for sure that Brian Daboll is getting fired tomorrow. I do think that from conversations I've had, I do think this coaching staff is finished. I just think, the general manager is involved in every part of this operation. Every part of this operation is colored by the GM because the Giants are more of one of those like baseball general manager setups. That's kind of what they are. So you can't separate the two. Chris Spire says, do you think Giants playing more zone was a mistake? And do you think the Giants will actually fire the coach and GM? I personally think they will fire the coach. If not now, at the end of the season. I think the GM is more on the ropes than people would realize. I mean, in addition with the Saquon Barkley stuff, I mean, how could anybody sit here and say that this is going in any positive direction, that they're making any progress? I predicted them to win 4 games, and I might have overshot the Giants win total. Seriously. I predicted them to win 4 games. You should be calling me an optimist. Yes, playing more zone was a mistake. I think what Martindale did really well the last 2 years, their personnel hasn't been good enough from the start. It still isn't. Martindale has a scheme that it takes some chances, but it also helps conceal weaknesses in personnel by using guys to their strengths, trying to conceal their weaknesses, and also, one thing Deonte Banks is struggling with is that they're playing more zone. He is a man-to-man corner, and now his confidence looks shot, but he is a man-to-man press corner, and that's how they were using him before. It's not how they're consistently and always using him. Now they're playing more zone. He's not as good at zone. That's just one example. Chris says, what happens if one owner wants to fire a guy and one guy wants to keep them? Well, you could have something like what we saw with the Gettleman-Shermer situation, where let's say the Giants, because listen, this is one thing. The Giants are not known for pulling the plug quickly on general managers. And you always have the overhauls, right? The overhauls of the operations, um, of the Giants operation, and of um, when they make changes. Like when they got Gettleman out of here and they fired him and they brought in Shane. Shane, there was all this conversation of them with a different analytics department and revamping the way that they scout and their new draft room and going digital and all those things, right? So when you make all those changes and you throw all your eggs in that basket, that's part of the reason you don't want to just rip it all up, because you do make a lot of changes to the way that you operate. And when you make drastic changes like that, you don't want to just say, well, okay, 1 year, 2 years, like it's not working. Let's go back to the old way. Or, yeah, we changed our whole building, but let's just fire everybody. The problem is, though, when you do that and you get 3 years in and all you hear is excuses and all you hear is national narratives protecting, um, protecting the weaknesses and the problems, and finger pointing, whether it's on the sideline or from the front office. And, listen, anybody who thinks I'm crazy should go listen to Saquon Barkley's interview on the Pivot podcast. Go watch that interview where Saquon talks about the way that the Giants handled his exit. Go watch that and tell me that the Giants are doing things the right way. All right, let's see. Hey, thank you for all of those super chats. Really appreciate you guys. All right. This is a good opportunity to remind you guys who we are sponsored by. And listen, all of the super chats and super stickers, really, I'm so supportive of them, and I'm so thankful for your support and really appreciate that. This is Talkin Ball Postgame Live, Giants Panthers immediate rapid reaction here with Pat Leonard, New York Daily News NFL columnist and Giants beat writer, and also host on the Believe Network of Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard. And we do these lives after every Giants game, but we also have tons of podcasts, a lot of fun guests we have lined up. Benny Fowler, Super Bowl champion, former NFL wide receiver, has joined us weekly throughout this season. We'll continue to break down the whole league, not just the Giants. First Down with Benny Fowler. Continue to be excited about where we are going here. And remember, if you're not subscribed already, the YouTube channel is PL on NFL. The Believe podcast audio, go wherever you get your podcast. I mean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever. It's Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard. Sign up, subscribe, download those episodes. A lot of fun conversations and questions. And I learned so much from the fans, and you guys hopefully are learning something from me. And then we'll continue to keep this rolling, keep building. Looking forward to being at the Super Bowl in New Orleans, have merch in the works. I know Joey B has always been pushing for the Talkin Ball merch. That's coming around the bend, so look for that. This bye week will be a good time to hit the refresh button, recharge, and kind of reset, and let's go. Looking forward to that. But these conversations have been great, and it wouldn't be possible without our sponsors. So I'd ask you, if you love what we're doing, please consider opening an account on MyBookie, purchasing one bag of Boom Chaga, giving it a try, and also purchasing a bottle of Estate 98 coffee, because these sponsors are what makes this possible here on the Believe Network. So MyBookie is a sports book. It's rolling out the red carpet for sports bettors. And if you use the promo code PATSPICKS on the link in all my social media profiles, you'll get a 100% match on your first deposit of $50 or more, all the way up to $1,000 plus a $10 casino chip. I picked the Panthers to cover in this game. That's a W. That's a victory right there. I pick every game against the spread every week. That's in the New York Daily News. And then I give you guys my Pats picks. It's usually about 3 or 4 can't miss picks that I think you should roll up there. This week's picks were, if you didn't tune in already, they were the Chargers, the Vikings, and the Chiefs to cover. So looking for those 3 to hit. But yeah, MyBookie, go to the link in all my social media profiles, make that first deposit, use the promo code PATSPICKS, get that deal, bet anything, anytime, anywhere. And listen, if you don't know already, my Twitter or X account is PLeonardNYDN. And then I'm everywhere else: Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Threads. PL on NFL. I know Threads is booming a little bit. That's PL on NFL. Sign up there. My Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, same handle. And then on X, I am P Leonard NYD. And thanks for following. Thanks for subscribing. Promise you won't regret it if you want to hear what is going on with this team. It's not always going to be what you want to hear, but I believe it's what you need to hear to be most informed about your team, if that makes sense. And thank you so much, everybody, for being here. It's also brought to you by Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, a natural extract loaded with anti-inflammatory, immune-boosting antioxidants, and heart-healthy compounds. We had Rich Funk, founder of the company, on the podcast recently. Go check out that episode. As he told you there, you can easily pour this natural liquid supplement into any of your favorite drinks. I put mine in my coffee every morning and immediately feel the difference. Personally, I feel a post-workout like energy boost with Boom. Chaga also has the ability to lower cholesterol, reduce inflammation, and improve immune and heart health with its beta-glucans and antioxidants. Go to boomchaga.com today to place your first order. And if you use the discount code TalkinBall25 or access it through the QR code on your screen, you'll get 25% off your first subscribe and save order. Right now, that means a month's supply costs you only $30. Start feeling the difference today at boomchaga.com. And also brought to you by Estate 98 Coffee. Estate 98 Coffee is a specialty coffee with a specialty coffee concentrate that is perfect when you want to make a quick cup of coffee and skip the lines. It takes me less than 10 seconds to make a delicious Estate 98 iced or hot coffee. It's great as a mixer for espresso martinis, and each bottle can make up to 16 cups. Go to estate98.com/talkinball to get a special exclusive offer, 80% off your first order. Like I said, guys, please, if you can, give all of our sponsors' products a try. All right, let's get to our next question in the queue. Thank you, everybody, for those super chats. All right. Jim says everything that can be said about Daniel Jones has been said. So, Pat, how do you evaluate Evan Neal's performance today? I thought Evan Neal played well for what we were expecting, right? I think you need to see him back it up. Obviously, the Panthers, I believe, have one of the worst pass rushes in the NFL, but still Jadeveon Clowney, that's NFL players, and this is a guy who has struggled. He gets healthy on the field, has a game where you don't hear his name much. I think that's arrow pointing up for that game for Evan Neal. So I feel good for the kid at least, because he's really kind of behind the eight ball with that injury being misdiagnosed. Mules likes Tyrone Tracy, but obviously, some big mistakes down the stretch. Let's see. Peterstown says, is this nightmare ever going to end? Not as long as they keep rolling the same thing out there. He says Evan Neal actually looked like a real pro today. Yes, he did. Authentic says, I feel bad for the kid, Tyrone Tracy, but keep your head up. Yeah, I feel bad too. Great guy. Love my team, says Authentic, but I do want a top 5 pick since we are out of it. That is the one silver lining of losing a game like this. Chronicle says Shador is going to be a great Giant. Hey, listen, that would certainly add some spice to the mix. Shador Sanders throwing to Malik Neighbors. That would be a very interesting, very interesting. Let's see. Dave Z says, if you change coaches now, they might unite and actually win a game or two. So just keep it status quo and lose out to get the first pick. It pained me to type that. That is interesting. We all know, though, that Giants ownership doesn't believe in tanking. Kyler says, why the F does Jones look at the tablet every time after doing something dumb? He clearly isn't learning. Well, that's what he does after every game or every series. Daniel Jones goes to the tablet after every series. Whether if it was Tommy DeVito, it was Drew Lock, every Giants quarterback, that's what they do. They sit down, they talk about it with their position coach. With Brian Daboll, he comes over as the play caller. So that's just standard operating procedure, whether it goes well or poorly. Like after they score touchdowns, they do it. After interceptions. But I know that's not what you want to see as a fan after those key mistakes. You want them to just fix it, because when you see bad mistakes, you feel like what you see going wrong is obvious. Dave Z says Wellington Mara is rolling in his grave. In all seriousness, Wellington, John's late father, is John's guiding light. John reveres his father, and one thing that Wellington Mara always operated on was a principle of believing very strongly in the fans, the voice of the fans. And John has, without fail, not wavered from being his father's son in the sense that when the fans turn is when he recognizes it's time for a change. And so, whether it's the attendance at the stadium dissipating or fans writing emails and telling him that they want to see change, that's usually his guiding light, coming from his father, which is how something that he really believed in was listening to the fans. So that's always something to keep in mind based on how John Mara operates. Peterstown says, how about Daboll tells his players to hit the block, run, catch, and score buttons, right? Kyler says, why doesn't the line push our runners like other teams? They give no damn extra effort. Neal wasn't a problem, so that's good. Kyler, I did see a play where it looked like John Runyon Jr. Pulled Tyrone Tracy, I think, or Singletary. One of the plays, it was like a third and short, I think, and he basically pulled him over the line to gain and the pile. And there were some other guys involved in that. So I did see that in spots today, but I know what you're saying. You just want to see more extra yards at the end of those runs and those plays. Dave Z says, thank you, Pat, for giving us this outlet for our frustrations. You got it, Dave. Thanks for being here. Santee Claus says, it seems the coach killer wearing number 8 as another unfortunate victim due to poor performance. This young man is a cancer to the winning culture. He's part of the problem. He's not the problem, in my opinion. Brett says, from the head down, time for a change. I agree, Brett. Michael says, this team is awful. Make changes from top to bottom. It is awful. The operation is awful. The execution is awful. They have an offensive head coach who got this job based on his play calling and his scoring in Buffalo, who can't score points. It's not just the quarterback. A2 says, hey, Pat, today's game was another unique way of losing. Kind of impressive how many ways this team can discover to lose a game. Truly inspirational, no doubt. Brett says, the play calling sucks, Pat. Simply simplify everything. Yes, it does. Authentic says, we need to keep both Shane and Daboll. We need stability. Brett says, Neal played through every play. Great game. Why has he been sitting? Ooh, interesting question there, Brett. Brett says, regardless of the fumble, Tracy needs to stay on the field. Brett, interesting comment there about Neal from you. I think, I do think he was still injured into the season, even though the Giants weren't letting on and he wasn't on the injury report, because Carmen Brasillo, the offensive line coach, he seemed to slip at one point and make a comment about how Evan had only been doing stuff for 2 weeks. And I asked him about that, if he meant he was only practicing for the last 2 weeks. And he said, no, that he hadn't, that wasn't the case. But I think the recovery from the setback in the spring after the ankle injury, after the misdiagnosis of his ankle as a sprain, even though it was a break, I think that really put Evan back. And then also I think the Giants were kind of keeping him on the sideline because they don't want him to go out there and have a huge, terrible game. And it'd be another talking point about why things have gone so poorly. British Gridiron Film says, just got back in from the game. Daniel Jones last game, hopefully with a competent quarterback, we win the game. Constant off target throws. Man, I agree that Daniel obviously made plays to lose this game, but I don't understand people who think that he's the only reason why this team is losing. I genuinely don't. But British Gridiron, you're awesome for weighing in and giving that viewpoint. And thanks for joining and thanks for the super chat. I really do appreciate that. And I think that, listen, we've seen programs and teams turn around because they added the right quarterback. Washington, a good example. But one thing Washington did was they got a good coach and general manager and new culture and regime and like a fresh start to the addition of that quarterback as well. Like, I think it's overlooked that they brought in some really good, depth and veteran pieces and guys who are like in stable supporting roles, and the locker room seems stronger and there's belief there. And Quinn has the team responding to him. And obviously the quarterback is the straw that stirs the drink, but I think they've done a lot, there to support it. They're even getting a really good play from an offensive line that was supposed to stink, coached by Bobby Johnson, one of the scapegoats last year from the Giants. So, I do think there's a lot of different factors, but obviously, listen, again, just want to reiterate this. Anybody who's just joining or thinks that, just because I sit here and say Jones wasn't the only reason, I am not advocating them running back Daniel Jones next year. In fact, I think with the injury guarantee, there's a really good chance we've seen Daniel Jones' last snap as a Giant at this point, right? So, that's where I'm at. I mean, I understand that and I support the changeover, but I really don't like the way that he is constantly blasted by media members as a scapegoat to protect the people running the Giants right now. I think it's disgusting. I think it's disgusting. All right, let's see. Got another nice super chat here. Daniel Hirsch, always bringing the support. Daniel says, Pat, you are the GOAT and you're just getting started. Daboll's press conferences make me sick. Thanks, Daniel. Thank you for the enormous super chat there. Really appreciate that. I think I personally believe, like, I know there's people bad mouthing me somewhere. I know there's some trolls in this chat. I know there's trolls all over social media. And listen, I don't expect everybody to agree with me. I don't want everybody to agree with me. Everybody shouldn't agree with me. This is a business where, though, I believe that what you see and what you believe and what you know, I think it's only right to be showing the fans the information that you have. And frankly, I'm just not afraid to have to generate analysis off of what I strongly believe in based on the information I have. And sometimes I'm wrong, right? Everybody's wrong. Like I said, I picked the New Orleans Saints to win their division. They fired the coach already. Like, there are plenty of things I don't get right, So definitely not somebody who thinks I'm above, like, raising my hand at certain points and just saying, oh yeah, I screwed that up, or, hey, I was wrong, or whatever it is. But, I think that, Daniel, to your point, we're building something real here because I'll just be honest with you. It's the game of playing to the teams and to the sources and trying to push versions of the truth that people are telling you because they want it out there to help themselves. Like, I can't do it. I can't do it. It's do I have sources and people who I lean towards or I support, or, I take their side on things or whatever? Yes, but it's when I believe that the truth points to a certain thing. I'm not going to tell a version of the truth that is a lie to protect somebody. Like, as much as I felt that Joe Judge shouldn't have been fired after year 2, and I thought that he was a good CEO coach, and I thought he was undercut, he had his legs undercut and this and that, I also know that once that press conference happened in Chicago, like, all bets were off, because even though nothing he was saying was wrong, it's hard to you couldn't support that, right? You couldn't support the Dexter Lawrence made a comment post-game that they need to do better on the edges against the run. What? Well, I mean, Carolina had some success up the middle, I'll tell you that. They had success in a lot of places with the run. Holy cow. Wow. Man, anything but criticizing the interior Giants defensive line. Is that what we're doing here? Thank you for that super chat. Really appreciate that, Daniel. All right, let's see. Let's get back into the queue. Daniel, thanks for the super chat. You guys remember, if you purchase a super chat or super sticker like Daniel just did, or like some of our other loyal followers have, I will answer your question immediately or address your opinion immediately. It jumps to the top of the queue. Let's see. Kyler says Rich Eisen actually called a good game. I was entertained by his calling more than the game. Yeah, Eisen's funny. He's entertaining. I just thought the lean of the analysis from Kurt, who I really love Kurt Warner's analysis, but I just think it's not the first broadcast I've heard where it feels like it's slanted towards against Daniel Jones. Chronicle says Daboll is coaching himself out of a job. Shane, however, has had some young talent looking good. Interesting. I would want to know what your list includes there, Chronicles. Brett thinks they should trade Dexter Lawrence for 3 guys. A2 says 60 yards passing after 3 quarters. Daniel Jones's fault. Authentic says, Pat, tell us why you don't like this regime. We got to continue to build. Um, I think I've laid that out, but I'll get into it more as I go and all these other answers here. Authentic. Brett says wide receivers have zero separation. Well, it's something every play, right, Brett? So it's like it's one time it's a drop. Another time it's Daniel doesn't see an open receiver. Another time it's no separation. Another time it's a receiver like Neighbors, who's very special talent, running a route that's a yard short of the first down marker when he's supposed to be across it. Or there's a pass protection breakdown. Whatever it is, there's always something. Baseball says, Pat, how do you think Daniel Jones didn't blow this game? He overthrows Neighbors on the first drive, doesn't pull the trigger on a flea flicker with 2 open receivers, throws 2 red zone picks. He's a bum. Yeah, that overthrow of Daniel Jones, that overthrow of Daniel Jones was, or I'm sorry, that overthrow of Malik Neighbors in that first drive. I don't know what that was. That was ridiculous. Inexplicable. Inexplicable. Just getting some texts about how bad this is. Barbara says, so what quarterback does everyone want with the first pick? Right now, I think Shador is the pick at number 1. Be interesting if Deion Sanders was on the sideline for Giants games. That'd be interesting dynamic. Not impossible though. I mean, who else would you want? Let's see. Gerald says, Pat, you believe there should be a GM and head coach change because you don't believe in their ability to develop a team and or a quarterback. I think, hold on one second. I'm just getting a message in here. Oh, yeah. Yeah, you can see all the people who align with the organization, or I wouldn't say with necessarily just with the organization. All the people aligning with the leaders of this regime are putting it on the quarterback, even after the turnover in overtime was committed by somebody other than him. It's really special. It's really special. Let's see. Okay, wait. Let me answer your question though. So, Gerald, no, I don't believe in their ability to develop and build a team. I think that their drafting has been poor. I think that their free agent signings and decisions have been up and down. I believe even when they get a good player in like Brian Burns, the asset allocation was reckless considering what they needed on this team, based on the money they spent and also the picks they used. I thought that was a desperate move. I said it at the time. You can go back and look. And I like Brian Burns a lot, like him as a person, like him as a player. Not blaming him for the reason the team is what it is, but I'm saying, you could have used that money on Saquon and an edge rusher. You could have used the pick you traded for him on a corner. Their offensive line this offseason needed a complete overhaul and retooling because the first year that they were here, they signed John Feliciano and Mark Lewinsky. They drafted Evan Neal, Josh Azudu, and Marcus McKeithen. And Azudu can't play. Neal, we just saw get back on the field. We'll see. Hasn't looked good prior to this. McKeithen's not on the team. Glowinski's not on the team. Feliciano's not on the team. They honestly, I liked Feliciano. I thought getting rid of him honestly was a mistake. But my point is the fixes to the O-line that needed to be made now were because the initial fixes to the line didn't hold up, right? So, it's just, let me think. I think that the lack of depth and high-end talent, right? Jalen Hyatt, a guy who finally factored in this game, but Jalen Hyatt, a guy who they haven't shown trust in. And listen, also, like the guys like Hyatt, Evan Neal, who were on the field, made some plays in this game. Now I want to see it against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You want to see it against these NFL teams that are legit teams because the Carolina Panthers stink. Like they stink. So, no one's basing anything off of this game from the standpoint of, oh, I saw a guy make a good play against the Panthers. Like he's fine. That's not, you don't evaluate yourself against the worst team in football. You do, however, indict yourself when you lose to the worst team in football, unless you are the worst team in football. All right, let's see. Gerald, I hope that answers your question. I think I'll say more about that for sure. Jim says, Pat, let's contrast Denver, Sean Payton, Bo Nix with the New York Giants. Did we misevaluate Nix? Did we have an opportunity to get Payton? Well, no, so Sean Payton, I don't think that aligned with the, let me see. So one thing I will say, we don't know how this is going to play out. Obviously, JJ McCarthy tore his knee. So if the Giants drafted him, maybe he would have torn his knee and they would have been sitting here with the same quarterback issue behind Daniel Jones with no one else to just put in there and show progress and that kind of thing. But right. So yeah, Sean Payton came into Denver a year later. So the Giants hired Daboll and Schoen going into 2022. And then Payton came in 23 with Denver. So that was not aligned properly. That's what I was going to say that I had to double check that I wasn't like going to say something wrong there. I didn't want to be inaccurate about that, but he was a year later. As far as the quarterbacks though, it was very interesting to me that the Giants did not draft a QB after they did not get Jaden Daniels, Drake May, and Caleb Williams. I think that Michael Penix Jr., Bo Nix, JJ McCarthy, interesting that a regime that was clearly so out on Daniel Jones really anyway, based on their behavior and things that you heard, but you signed him to that extension the year before as this regime. And then you thought you were going to win in year 2 and you built the team to do that and fell flat. Now year 3, you're even worse than the team was before you took over, but you still don't draft a quarterback at 6. And now you don't have a plan for the future other than just keep giving us more time. So, listen, I wouldn't have drafted Bo Nix because, and listen, they scouted him more than I did. I would not have drafted Bo Nix because when I watched him at the Senior Bowl, it was confusing for me to understand what people were talking about that they saw. That was just a couple practices that I saw, though. Obviously, if I were really evaluating him, I would have done a lot more work on him in person than just seeing him with my eyes with that. And I'm not including things you saw on TV or whatever. But I think what it shows you is that Sean Payton can get something out of a QB that, for example, I and the Giants decided was not the guy, right? That's what it looks like to have an offensive coach who is going to get the most out of somebody who not everybody has rated as, certain high level. So yeah, in other words, when you have an offensive head coach who calls the plays, you want to be in a position where you have a coaching staff that makes those players better. That's my point. All right. So let's keep getting into the queue. Thank you again for that super chat, Jim. Really appreciate you. Thank you everybody for being here, by the way. We're consistent, strong numbers on this chat. I know you guys are frustrated. Like I said, it's frustrating covering this team as well. Let's see. All right. I believe I found my place. Baseball says he wants Jalen Milroe if they draft a quarterback. Dave Z says they have way too many holes across the roster. That is for sure and under discussed. Barb disagrees with the comment earlier. I think it was by Brett saying that they should trade Dexter. He says, can't trade Dexter Lawrence. Stop it. Brett says the majority of this loss is on player management, play calling, run defense, and the secondary never finding the ball right. And the quarterback is in there as well. But all of those things are issues. Exactly. To Brett's point, all of those things are issues with this team. Gary says, Pat, I never thought I would see a Giants team that is more boring than the Joe Judges. Right. So it was all Joe Judge's fault when the offense couldn't function before. But now it's not the coaching staff and general manager's fault. It's the quarterback. That's it. Barb says Daboll needs to go. Love Shador. Not sure the Giants would draft him, though. We will see. Dave says he prefers John Runyon Jr. to Saquon Barkley. You could have had both. Thomas says, Pat, is that a Steinway grand piano behind you? And can you play us some Danny Blue Gone Blues? That's funny. I loved, by the way, that fans Danny Euros sign. That was hilarious. That would love that sign. Yeah, no. So this is, unfortunately, this is not my real house. Virtual background here. Hopefully one day my house looks like this. Peterstown says maybe bringing a guy like Ernie Accorsi to help with the vetting process for a GM and coach. Ernie is already somebody who has John Mara's ear, so it would have to be somebody other than that. Something needs to change because there are way too many cooks in that kitchen, says Peterstown. Brett says Sean Robinson, Xavier McKinney, Julian Love, Saquon Barkley, John Feliciano. Who else? HAR says 10 years of the same. Would you believe it is ownership? Give Kafka play calling duties and let's just see, says HAR. Man, that would be a tough thing to go back to and tell me that this operation is fine. Brett says Richie James had a good year, except for the fumbles walked. Hodgins was great, then his playing time was cut. Neal sitting for a practice squad player. Management stinks. Noel says, what's going on, Pat? Do you think Daboll is intentionally keeping Daniel Jones as the starter, knowing that he is his worst option to win games to get the top draft pick? No, I think that Daboll is under enough pressure where if he had a better option, he would play him. Coaches and players want to win. You also can't, from Daboll's standpoint, you can't lie to your locker room and say this player is better when you know the other one is, because players know. Players know. We got another super chat here. Let's check it out. Looks like it's from Gerald. Yeah, Pat, you answered my question and made many good points. That's why I subscribe. You're not jumping on the Giant bandwagon, rah, rah. You call what you see. Thank you, Gerald. Thank you for saying that. Really appreciate that. And I like when people call me on what I say and say, I think you're wrong because X, Y, Z. I mean, the only thing I don't like anytime we do chats or conversations is when people make it personal and become nasty and become trolls. I never tolerate that. I don't think that's good for anybody. I don't think it should happen for me. I don't think it should happen to any reporter, regardless of what they're saying or selling or doing. It's okay to disagree. And yeah, I just feel, Gerald, to be honest with you, sometimes it feels like you're shouting into an echo chamber because so much of the NFL is a business and an operation where everybody's kind of holding hands, helping each other, trying to make sure they all keep their jobs. And I think that would be a difficult thing for me to do. And I don't ever intend to be that. I hope I'm never that. I hope that I'm somebody who always says what I believe is true, no matter what the response is, if that makes sense. What I believe is true. That's what I want to share with you. And thank you for saying that, Gerald. Let's see. Christine, I'm only skipping over that one because I think I answered in your super chat. Scorpio thinks Daniel Jones stinks. Santi says, how can we fire John Mara and his advisors? I detest number 8, but the problem lies at the top. Scorpio says, not one receiver, tight end, or running back wants to come to the Giants because of Daniel Jones. Brett says, who is number 13? Pat looks pretty good. Dummies. An allusion, I think, to Jalen Hyatt not playing enough. HAR says, we seem to be losing quality players in the past due to inconsistencies. Hey, Tish, where are you? Let's get your input and get things going. Really well said, HR. Baseball thinks the quarterback is bad, not the play calling. Barb wants the first pick. Edwin says, fire everyone. Clean house, please. Brett says, how do we get the plane rerouted to Buffalo? That's a good line. Baseball says, yeah, fire everyone and be the Jets. See where that gets you. Kevin says, people act like Daboll is some offensive genius. He's been an offensive coordinator 4 times in this league. Yeah, you said it. HAR says, Theo Johnson, Malik Neighbors, Wan'Dale Robinson, Tracy, and Jalen Hyatt. Giants have plenty of offensive weapons, but yet play calling, updated O-line. Man, we miss Andrew Thomas and still can't win. See, I think there's some positives with some of those players. I do think it's too early to say that some of those rookies and players are draft hits. I think that's really way too early to say something like that. Barb says Locke stinks, like you said. That's on the coach and GM for not having a backup. Daboll needs to go. What quarterback do we draft? I do think Shador is the top one right now. T. Patrick says Kurt Warner hates the Giants since they benched him, but he was constantly on Daniel Jones which is something that people lead the Giants are, want out there. So that's what was surprising to me. Eli says both interceptions were not bad read interceptions. Agreed. Barb says Warner hates the Giants. Brett says both interceptions were bad play calls, along with the 3rd and 1 flea flicker. The fumble even looked too busy. Nothing is simplified. Patrick says, I agree. It's Schoen, ineffectual drafts, and free agency signings that created this horrendous roster. Yes, that's the thing. This has all been a patient process up to this point from the outsider's view of let's wait and evaluate. I don't understand why people don't see that the first year they exceed expectations. They don't stay committed to a rebuild. They think that they have it figured out. They think they're going to win in year 2. They fall flat on their face. If you remember, Sterling Shepard said that behind the scenes, Brian Daboll was talking Super Bowl and the team fell flat on its face. Everybody gets fired or leaves of their own accord because they don't want to work here. Giants retool. Brian Daboll takes over play calling, and now everything's an optics-driven narrative spell of Joe Schoen, Brian Daboll, and the Giants trying to make things look better than they are and blame everything on the quarterback. Well, I have news for you. This has been a 3-year process of things going a certain way, and it's not going in the right direction. John Mara's own evaluation and his promise is that when he walks off the field at the end of the season, he needs to see the arrow pointing up. This today, the loss to the Carolina Panthers. Look, even going to overtime with the Carolina Panthers, even having this game close is the definition of regression. This is regression. This is what this is. Eli says, I think the structure of the franchise is doing okay. I don't believe Daniel Jones is the cause. We have a few bad plays that result in our record. This year's quarterback draft class is not a great one. Schoen drafted well. Wow. Very rosy outlook there, Eli. Obviously, you're welcome to have all of those takes for sure. I disagree, especially with the few bad plays part there. I do think that if I were a coach, I would be saying the same thing the Giants coaches are saying to their players. Like Shane Bowen with the run defense, he'll say, well, it's only a handful of big runs every week that's really getting us. Well, when you give up 2 to 3 to 4 explosive run plays every week, that's what makes you a bad run defense. Like as a coach, that's what I would say to my team to keep them fighting. But that's what makes you a bad team and a bad defense. Patrick says, I agree, Pat. You've identified the problems expertly. Thank you for not succumbing to the pressures of being an official Giants reporter. You got it, T. Thank you for saying that. Eli said, made some questionable free agency moves in regards to McKinney and Barkley on Schoen. KTS says, Ward or Milrow, only 2 quarterbacks Giants should be targeting. Barb says, I like Schoen, but Daboll has to go. Brett says, Daboll calls plays at times that no one would think to call. That would be great if any of them ever worked. Peterstown says, with Brandon Brown coming from Philly Tree, I would give him a shot at GM. I mean, he's been a part and parcel of everything that's been going on here. I don't know why you would just promote him like that. But, who knows? Alex says, Wink was an excellent defensive coordinator and Daboll pushed him out with dysfunctional crap. You said it, Alex. Kevin says, Daboll has had 4 stints as an offensive coordinator, and 3 of the 4 he's sucked. 2 years in Cleveland, 1 year in Miami, and 1 year in Kansas City. It's amazing how he looked great with Josh Allen in Buffalo. Everything you said there is true. Everything you said there is true. There's a lot of data and a lot of lines on that resume that read just like this Giants experiment reads. And by the way, on Alex's comment about the Daboll and Wink leaving with dysfunctional crap, just to be clear, Martindale resigned. Yeah, he was pushed out in the sense that he decided he couldn't work here anymore, but left of his own accord, which is, again, one of many coaches who did that. Ashley says Daboll play calling sucks. There's no imagination. Brett says 0, and I mean 0 interceptions from the secondary. Not even close. Is that possible all season, and can it be a record to shoot for? Yeah, hey, maybe they'll get another high draft pick for that. Kevin says the Giants need to hire an experienced GM and head coach. Brett says, thanks a lot, Pat. We are pissed. Thanks for being here, Brett. I'm a fan, says the Giants need a dual threat quarterback. They have to draft Milrow. He is a stud and the best college quarterback. Let's see. Okay. Michael says, I think you're right about the college quarterbacks, KTS. I like Cam Ward a lot. Ward looks like a guy who has some talent, not overly fast. Has an arm, right, for sure. Can extend plays. Did have a game-losing fumble where he should have gotten rid of the ball. Not sure how he sees the field, how well he sees the field. Have to see more tape and do more evaluations to talk to more people about that. Danny says, can you ask Mara if he's glad he gave that contract to Daniel Jones still? He has said he was glad before. We'll see if he still does. Will says, we need a quarterback. Get rid of Daboll and Jones. Simple. I'm a Giants fan all my life. Bench Jones. Ready, please. Enough. Bill says, the Wellington Mara video the Giants made recently was really well done. If you haven't seen it, I recommend it. Will P says, sick of losing enough. Daboll out. Jones out. KTS says, Shane has to go. Johnny says, hey, Pat, what are you hearing around the rumor mill like Shador and Dion being a package deal? We might just have the openings, but I can't see Mara ever going out of the box like that. That would be shocking. That would be shocking. But at this point, nothing else has worked, right? Though, man, Dion would be a hoot based on how I've seen him treat media members at times publicly. Lou says, Giants look checked out. No complimentary football. Everybody out, says KT. T. Patrick says, Shane and Daboll must go first. Then finding a way to trade the first pick for multiple high picks to fortify the atrocious lines and linebackers are next. Then a quarterback can be added. Yeah, a lot of problems on this roster. Jacob says, hey, Pat, long time no see, buddy. You worried today might get to Tyrone's head? No, mistakes happen. I mean, I think as long as people don't blame him for one mistake the way they blame Daniel Jones for one or two, I think that, what this should call into mind, though, is, all the shade always thrown at Saquon Barkley about stuff. Like, players make mistakes all the time. The best players in the league make mistakes all the time. My example for what the NFL is and how people need to think of it is, I know Lamar Jackson is one of one, but when you watch Lamar play, like, he'll make misreads or bad throws or commit a turnover where you say, what the heck was that? The thing is, he makes those bad plays and then he comes back and scores 4 touchdowns, right? Like, so Tyron Tracy today, he had the fumble, but then he has a touchdown. He has the dropped interception, but he has other key runs. So it's not always going to be perfect. You can't expect it to be perfect. Bottom line. Let's see. Bet says our offense wasn't even better than the Panthers. Right. What are we talking about here? We're talking about not blaming people above Daniel Jones. Anybody who thinks that. Oh, my God. Bet says that's the bigger problem. Yes. Could we talk about how much time Bryce Young had to throw today? Like, is nobody really talking about this? Silky Smooth says, Danny Dimes at it again. 2 red zone turnovers. You won't win in the NFL. British says 2 interceptions in field goal range. Flea flicker, bad play call, but throw was late. Neighbors catch where he took a bump was super late throw. Daniel Jones stinks, and I have been a supporter of him until now. Barb says, Pat, I will always have your back. Thank you, Barb. I know you will. I have yours. William says, bench Daniel Jones. Baseball says, DJ is not this regime's quarterback. Hold on. Whoa. Time out. They re-signed him to a 4-year, $160 million contract extension. He's not their quarterback? Just because he's not their quarterback, right? 4-year, $160 million extension. Also, if he wasn't their quarterback, they would have had a better backup plan in place this year. Silky says they should have punished the Panthers today. True enough, some or most games come down to a play or two, a possession or two, but today's game should have been a blowout. Right. Even the fact that it was close is embarrassing. Baseball says, I agree. It's disgusting how the media goes after Daniel Jones. I do agree with that. Silky says, Giants should have been up 10 easily, maybe 13. Greg says, just because this year's draft is somewhat better than Shane's previous drafts doesn't make it so good. Thank you, Greg. 80-plus rushing yards in the first quarter for Carolina. 157-16, the yards for the Panthers versus the Giants in the first quarter. John says, in my opinion, huge problem with the team is a lack of leadership. On good teams, players who are leaders take responsibility and make other players who are not giving effort do better. Barkley was one, in my opinion. Christine says, Daniel left 6 to 14 points on the field. Patrick says, sounds like Lawrence has had enough of the extremely poor linebacker play. I agree. I love Dex. He's a great player. But if he's not going to take ownership for the interior D line being part of the problem as well, that's not cool because it's everybody. Like, no, stop pointing fingers. Jacob says, nice living room, Pat. Yeah, exactly. It's the piano that makes it. Rich thinks this regime will get one more year. Silky Smooth says 2 Renzo picks and just story. British says it was very cold at the stadium. Don't know if that was why he overthrew at the start. Silky says, why can't the Giants do like the Falcons and Vikings and sign a good veteran and build a team via the draft? That's a great question. That's the general manager. Why are they trying trick plays when they can't even execute regular plays? Is undefined. Silky says games should have never gone to overtime. T says it's not a separation issue with the receivers. Justin says, thank you for all your great coverage, Pat. Based on what you're hearing, how bad would it have to be for Mara to fully clean house from top to bottom? I'm embarrassed as a longtime fan. Well, let's go by John Mara's comments after the game first. John Mara's comments, he didn't speak after the game. Let's go by John Mara's comments in Manhattan a few weeks ago. If we go by those comments, what he said there is it can get as bad as possible. I'm not making changes in season is basically what he said. It is what he said. He said, I'm not making changes during the season. So that was his comment. Now, after the season, he basically said, we'll see. Because he said, I don't anticipate changes after the season, which is what he said. So you got to wait and see there, right? I think what it would take is what we've seen. You see a player quitting on the field. You see a guy cut because he won't take a pay cut and the players don't like it. You see players saying that things need to change. You see the Giants using Jakob Johnson as a marketing face for this trip and not putting him on the active roster. You see fans who have had enough. You see, constant injuries. You see poor decision-making, bad draft picks, signings that don't work out, trades that have players retiring after you acquire them. I mean, I don't think I'm crazy, but Justin says I'm embarrassed as a longtime fan. You know what I think it takes, Justin? I think it's a hard conversation between John and Steve. That's what I think it is. Horses says their drafting has been awful. Brett says if Judge had them running, A.T. Gano Gillen may not have been hurt. Ooh, interesting point there, Brett. So Brett's saying if Judge were here and he had them conditioning better, Thomas, Gano, and Gillen might not be hurt. Yeah, isn't it interesting that when guys were getting hurt when Judge was here, everybody was blaming it on how hard they were practicing. But now that everyone's getting hurt in practice under Daboll and Joe Schoen, no one wants to talk about it. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing? Fashow's heart is broken. I hear you. Silky, I see you saying, stop making excuses for Daniel, but I see you've made a lot of the same types of comments. So that's why I'll come to your next comments when they address something other than Daniel Jones stinks, because I see your point, and we've definitely put it out there here. Oh, we'll go to your next comment. Jones is a bum, and the fumble didn't cost him the game. The Tyrone Tracy fumble? That's the exact play that lost the game. Mules thinks Daniel Jones lost them the game, even though their running back fumbled in overtime in field goal range. T says the better the roster got, the clearer the source of the problem became. It's the quarterback, stupid. Joey B says, I'm over it, Pat. We suck. Fire everyone. Hit the reset button. And they better not raise our season ticket prices again with the trash we have to watch. That's the kind of stuff that if John Mara hears, gets to him. Silky says the line isn't terrible. They obviously run block pretty well. Patrick says a quarterback selected this offseason will suffer the same fate as Jones. I hate to tell you. No quarterback who ever lived could play well behind this ridiculous array of garbage Shane has gathered. Silky says the quarterback holds the ball and sees ghosts. Crobber says it's going to be a long time before this team is good again. Sucks, man. I agree with that. Wesley says it's all going to the Giants' plan. It's all for a purpose. We're going to come out the other side of this a better team, right? Oh, man. I mean, if you have no hope, that's got to be your only one, right? Larry says, I thought Spencer Rattler would have been a good gamble as he was taken very late. There was an opportunity to get him cheap with a late pick. I thought so too. They were in that market. There were people who really thought they were going to take him. They just ended up saying that they thought he was selected above their value on the board. So that's Joe Schoen, drafting for his exact value. Silky says Bo Nix better than Jones in college and better than him in his rookie year. Johnny says the 3 years Shane has been here, there hasn't been a franchise-changing player drafted or signed. Our best players are still Gettleman's guys. Neighbors and Tracy look good, but are not franchise-changing. Very good points. Very good points. Inbred says no unit has improved under Daboll and Shane in 3 years. I agree. George says late to the party, was at the dentist, was more enjoyable than the game, and saw your daily news headline in the cab and knew it was going to be a good talking ball today. Thank you, George. Yep. Unfortunately, same old here in Giants land. Let's see. Let's see what we got. This is what happens when you don't draft the quarterback, says Intel. Silky, one last warning. You're calling somebody a dumb for their take. We don't do that here. Okay. So I love that you are taking a contrary viewpoint. Like you think it's Daniel Jones, and that's the problem. And I appreciate that viewpoint because it rounds out our conversation. Like I said, I've been wrong about things before. You can't make comments like this about people in our chat. This is not what we do here. We don't do that. This is not the place for that. You can go in my Twitter or X mentions with all the other trolls and make it personal if you want. We don't make things personal here. Please. Last chance. Dan says, you have balls, my friend. Not afraid to speak your opinion. Keep doing it. Thank you, Dan. Like I said, it's based on the information. Jacob says, Pat, what's easier on draft night? Covering a team that is a top 3 pick or covering a team drafting later in the draft? I would say you're more engaged in the draft when you're covering a team with a high pick, because then you have to do tons of work on all the top prospects and you're digging on everything. It's like you can leave no stone unturned. When your team has a pick in the late 20s, the guys at the top of the draft, as an NFL columnist, you're covering that. But, if you're looking at it from a Giants lens, there's plenty of players in the first round who are exciting, but you're like, well, that'll never be a possibility. Right. So it's more interesting for your team to have a high pick. It's more work, but I don't mind work, especially when it's fun work. All right, let's see. Intel wants Cam Ward. No, this is not accurate. Mara doesn't want a black quarterback. That's not accurate. Like I said, the Giants were looking. You saw on Hard Knocks that Brian Daboll said he would trade up for Jaden Daniels, so that's not accurate. Crobber says, bro, we didn't need to sign Saquon. Running the ball is not the problem. Okay. I mean, he's an MVP candidate on their arch rival in Philadelphia. All right, Silky, this is a valid point. Daniel Jones can't finish the drive unless he can run it in. That's a valid point, that he struggles throwing in the red zone. Of course. Yes. No, Silky, I promise you, I don't really think there's anybody in this chat who thinks that Daniel Jones should still be the Giants quarterback next season. There's no one. There's no one taking that viewpoint. But I think you make a really good point. I've said this about Daniel Jones for a while now. I think it's taken a lot of people a while to catch up. Everyone assumed that because he is a smart person and went to Duke and had an Ivy League scholarship offered to him and all that his problem is not mental. But I think his processing on the field is a major problem. Like, in other words, his physical attributes are not his issue. Even though he was a walk-on, at Duke, his physical attributes are not the problem. The problem is when the game speeds up and when the field shrinks, it's the processing. So I think that's a really good point by you. Let's see. Horses says, just hire Bill Belichick and be done with it. Lou says, hey, Pat, do you feel the Giants have a problem developing players? Because it seems like former players have better games. Example, A. Sean Robinson. Definitely, I think sometimes the way they handle guys leaving makes players feel a certain way and play a certain way against them. I also believe that, I think it's not just developing, it's also from a schematic level, putting them in the best position to succeed. So how do you use your players to conceal their weaknesses and accentuate their strengths? Dom says, Pat, what are your top 5 questions going to be for Joe Schoen? Dom, I don't have them ready at the moment. I'll tell you this. We talked to Joe Schoen, I believe, on Tuesday. I'm not certain of that yet. I believe it's going to be Tuesday. We'll double check that. He talks at the bye week. We should be doing a Talkin Ball live with Pat Leonard tomorrow, Monday, November 11th, at which point we will discuss those types of things. But I think certainly a major one would be, what is your argument for the fact that there has been progress made in your 3 years here? I think very short and sweet, you know? Ty says, what corner has looked great under Jerome Henderson's coaching? Man, definitely Jerome Henderson, definitely a leader in the odds of scapegoats who will be next for the Giants rather than actually ripping it up and doing what's right here. I think Deonte Banks put some good football on the field in the past. I think this year it's been worse. Defensively overall, I don't think Jerome Henderson is the reason why. Mike says, I don't think Belichick will have much passion anymore. He's been around the track so many times. He's quite old. Silky says, how can 2-8 be the best option to win? Make it make sense. Yeah, well, I'm just quoting Daboll there, Silky. I mean, that's what he said. So what I'm saying is he's saying on my roster, this is the best quarterback I have. That's what Daboll's saying. Tyrone says, hey, Pat, you don't think Locke sees a wide open Wandale on that flea flicker sack? Oh, Daniel should have thrown that ball. No doubt about it. Yeah, I mean, how can you argue that? I feel this franchise has been in denial of how they are viewed since Coughlin left. Coming off Hard Knocks to how this season is turning out has hammered that perception of the Giants. Very well said, Paulo. Great contribution there. Jim says, Pat, FYI, Bo Nix 2 touchdowns, Denver 14, Kansas City 10. And that was earlier on. Let's check the updates here. Yeah, that's interesting. I thought Bo Nix was really going to meet his match going in against Steve Spagnuolo in Kansas City. Still 14-10 in the third quarter there. Interesting. And New Orleans with the fired coach burst. Derek Carr, 2 touchdowns, both to Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Interesting. Thanks for the chip in there, Jim. Joel says, Pat came on late. Shane Bowen and the rest of the defensive staff needs to be fired. Defense sucks. Can't stop anyone. Team can do whatever they want to us. This whole team needs to get fired. They're terrible. Everybody, this is just a terrible operation. But Joel, I agree. I mean, listen, after Wink left, there were a lot of guys the Giants wanted who didn't want the job and who stayed where they were or took other jobs. Bowen was way down the list of candidates. And at least Bowen's been accountable when he does interviews. Horses says Hyatt looked good against the worst defense in the league. He must be amazing. Yeah, exactly. Intel says, Pat, what do we expect? You predicted 4 wins and I predicted 5 wins. It looks like 3 wins. There were people who picked a lot more than that. Tyrone says Daniel Jones is a Cyclops and always has been. Silky says, I don't understand what Giants fans don't understand about that, Silky. Silky, nobody here is advocating for Daniel Jones being the answer anymore. Nobody. I just believe that the narrative that it's all him is ridiculous. All right, let's see. Ashley says the only way Daboll saves his job is they hire an offensive coordinator with experience for next. Christine said Joe Judge had Daniel Jones at quarterback too. Pat, what's the common denominator? Well, actually, Christine, what happened with Joe Judge's offense to look that bad was that Jones got hurt, and then they had Mike Glennon and Jake Fromm playing. Again, bad roster construction. Brian Daboll this year has Daniel Jones playing. So their offense now is really at that same level with Daniel Jones in the game. Joe Judge didn't have Daniel Jones. So I don't think that's apples to apples. For sure, though, he was the franchise QB in both stops and spots. But my point is, how is the coach the only problem one time and the quarterback's the problem the other time? I don't follow that. Joey B says, I want to take a shot on John Gruden. He's done well with rebuilds, and Belichick is not going to want to do a rebuild. He has to get a team that can win now, I think. Yeah, the only problem with that is Gruden with those emails and what was said in those emails, really hard to rationalize hiring him. Joey says, we should draft Travis Hunter. I don't think any quarterback this year is a home run. I think we should suck for another year for Arch Manning. Christine says, watching the Giants for 30 years, back when they were ready to fire Bill Parcells. Oh, yeah, no, for sure, Christine. And that's why I don't take it lightly what I'm saying. It's just my belief based on my information and my takeaways of the team. But certainly, obviously, if you feel differently, then, that's your prerogative and you see something else in the team. So the Commanders, 17-14 at half over the Steelers. Interesting. Daboll had on glasses and still couldn't see how bad Jones is and unprepared this team is. No excuse losing to Carolina. No excuse to me. Exactly. No excuse. Mike says, Pat, the lighting on your face seems excessively bright. That's because I'm bringing light to the conversation about the Giants and about the truth. Sorry, that was cheesy. Let's see. Looks like we got another super chat in the queue here. Got another couple. N4 says, this is on Joe Schoen. If Saquon or Xavier McKinney got traded at the deadline, then we would have Drake May or Jaden Daniels right now. Schoen was wrong and arrogant. Yep. And the Giants thought that they were a good team last year, and they were not. All right. Guys, this has been an awesome chat. I want to remind you who our sponsors are here. We are brought to you by MyBookie. We are brought to you by Boom Chaga. We are brought to you by Estate 98 Coffee. So MyBookie rolling out the red carpet for sports bettors this season. We've been making you money this football season with MyBookie. And don't forget, every week, Pat's Picks and Giants sprinkle props. So use the promo code Pat's Picks at the link in all my social media profiles, and you'll get a 100% match on your first deposit of $50 or more, all the way up to $1,000, plus a $10 casino chip. MyBookie, bet anything, anytime, anywhere. Whether you like underdogs, favorites, over-unders, those prop bets that we like. I love those parlays. I love the receiving yards, ladders. I love that stuff. So please make those plays. Open an account with MyBookie. It is the best way to support the Talkin Ball Live with Pat Leonard podcast and the Talkin Ball podcast here on the Believe Network and on the YouTube channel PL on NFL. Also brought to you by Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, natural extract loaded with anti-inflammatory, immune-boosting antioxidants and heart-healthy compounds. You can easily pour this natural liquid supplement into any of your favorite drinks. I put mine in my coffee every morning and immediately feel the difference. I personally have felt a post-workout like energy boost with Boom. Chaga also has the ability to lower cholesterol, reduce inflammation, and improve immune and heart health with its beta-glucans and antioxidants. Go to boomchaga.com today to place your first order. And if you use the discount code TalkinBall25 or access it through the QR code on your screen, you'll get 25% off your first subscribe and save order. Right now, that means a month's supply costs you only $30. Start feeling the difference today at boomchaga.com. And last but not least, brought to you by Estate 98 Coffee. And By the way, guys, we're going to wrap up soon. So if you want anything answered that I didn't answer yet, please purchase a super chat or super sticker now. Otherwise, going to wrap up here. But super chat or super sticker, drop those in now if you want your question or comment answered before I take off. Also, please, while we are live, if you didn't already, hit the like button while we are live. That really helps engagement, helps us grow the podcast here on the Believe Network. We are brought to you here as well by Estate 98 Coffee, a specialty coffee concentrate, perfect for when you want to make a cup of coffee and skip the lines. It takes me less than 10 seconds to make a delicious Estate 98 iced or hot coffee. It's great as a mixer for espresso martinis, and each bottle can make up to 16 cups. Go to estate98.com/talking ball to get an exclusive offer for 80% off your first order. All right. Let's see. What do we got here? All right. Looks like one more question here on the super chats and super stickers. For those of you who had questions near the end of this chat that I didn't get to, I am planning on, I'll let you guys know on Twitter, on X, on social media. I'm planning to go live again tomorrow, Monday, November 11th at night to talk more about the upcoming press conference with Joe Schoen and where things stand. But Joel says, do you expect any coaching changes during the bye? I don't know how you couldn't make a coaching change after this. I really don't. I don't know how you couldn't make a general manager change after this. I really don't. Taking John Mara at his word, there's no changes coming during the season. So John Mara said that, and that's what he said. So based on his comment, there won't be. But I think that there's a chance there will be. No one has told me this. I have gotten texts from some people I trust who have said that I'm right, that they both have to go, that are, I would say, sources I trust and informed people in football. They're not people who would make the decision, though. So that's what I would say. But thank you so much for being here. This has been Talking Ball Live with Pat Leonard on the Believe Network here on the YouTube channel, PL on NFL. Hit those like buttons, subscribe, rate, and review. And if you're on Apple or Spotify listening on audio, please subscribe to the YouTube channel and come join us next time live in person on the YouTube channel here. Thank you so much for being here. Unfortunately, another Giants loss, 2-8 at the bye week, as the Giants limp into the bye with an operation in regression and in complete disarray. Take care.